Hello and welcome to another Analysis Behind the News, where we provide the perspective that you can use to help save American liberty and independence. Last week, James O'Keefe and his Project Veritas rolled out one undercover video after another of federal government employees admitting on camera that they were part of an organized resistance to President Trump's America First agenda. Project Veritas infiltrated the D.C. branch of the Democratic Socialists of America and found several federal employees as members who are using government resources to track down political opponents, leak confidential information, and harass others who are supporting the president's agenda. As Steve Bias reports at thenewamerican.com, it is all done to support a radical socialist agenda. And Allison Raybar is far from alone. In her own words, explaining that many employees are using the power they hold as government workers to resist President Trump. She explained, "There's a lot of talk about how we can resist from the inside at the Department of Justice." He continues further into the article. And as can be seen from the latest PV videos, these deep staters are often radical socialists who are working for the perpetuation of a left-wing globalist agenda, no matter who sits in the Oval Office. How did this happen, he asks. For years, there were those who advocated for a civil service system to replace the system the United States had, which allowed the president, as chief executive of the U.S. government, to replace any federal worker he wished for any reason he wished. Proponents of a civil service system argue that federal employees who do not actually make federal policy, but rather simply implement it, should be allowed to continue their employment, regardless of which political party is in power. Finally, in 1882, Congress passed the Pendleton Act, which created the U.S. Civil Service, accepting the validity of that argument. In short, their argument was that it makes no difference whether an employee in a government agency is a Democrat or a Republican, unless he or she is actually in a policy-making position. As these videos powerfully demonstrate, far too often the case is that there are many federal employees who believe they know better than the elected president, and they use their positions to advance their own agenda and correspondingly frustrate the agenda of the president. Add to that the fact that for the 2016 presidential election, those federal employees who gave to a presidential campaign did so overwhelmingly to Hillary Clinton, who has urged her fellow Democrats, who are federal employees, to stay during this administration. As Mr. O'Keefe said it, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And we wholeheartedly agree. These types of arrogant miscreants are merely useful tools that serve a much larger master. And that master is globalism that seeks to have a world government system, one that does not recognize national sovereignty or individual God-given rights. It's a process that is centuries old in the making. Groups have been organized to facilitate the surrender of not just American sovereignty, but other countries as well. A careful look at today's news will give you all the evidence you need. The most blatant example is the European Union. Then, do an internet search for political union, or economic union, or supranational union. You'll find quite a few countries in various stages of integration in any number of sovereignty-robbing unions. Once these unions are established, economic integration leads to political integration, and the nation members are expected to give away a certain amount of sovereignty for the greater good of the union. Great Britain is currently undergoing the extraction process of getting out of the EU because of this very thing. Its people no longer want to sacrifice for the greater good of the union. Now, over time, as these unions become more commonplace and more pronounced, a shift occurs within the world order. Soon, unaccountable regional bureaucracies are in charge, and these unions then begin to overlap. Over decades, countries are slowly being merged or integrated. To do so, the more advanced developed countries are slowly brought down to a certain level, while their developing neighbors are brought up to a level that allows the merge to happen. A new world order emerges. Borders are erased, trade barriers are gone, militaries are merged, police no longer serve local communities. Rather, they serve the unaccountable bureaucracy. The stage is then set for totalitarianism under a one-world government. Over the weekend, NBC reported online that Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping are on the same page when it comes to the fundamental concept of a desirable world order. This quote came from Dmitry Trenin, the director of the Carnegie Moscow Center think tank, who, according to NBC, wrote in an opinion piece in China Daily, a Chinese state-run newspaper. What do you think would be a desirable world order, according to these two leaders? Given their backgrounds, do you think it could be a world government ruled by them? To give you an idea of what type of world governmental system we might be under in the future, let's look no further than the United Nations. Then, look closer to see who the UN has as leaders. To say that they are anti-American is putting it very lightly. Founder of the John Birch Society, Robert Welch, sounded the alarm on this back in 1958 at the founding meeting. He said, "The process in that direction is going on right now, gradually but surely and with ever-increasing speed and spread. A part of that plan, of course, is to induce the gradual surrender of American sovereignty piece by piece and step by step to various international organizations, of which the United Nations is the outstanding but far from the only example, while the communists are simultaneously and equally gradually getting complete working control of such organizations. Both sets of steps, which were short and insidious at first, are now being steadily increased in both length and brazenness, until one day we shall gradually realize that we are already just a part of a worldwide government ruled by the Kremlin, with the police state features of that government rapidly closing in on ourselves. But another part of that plan is the conversion of the United States into a socialist nation, quite similar to Russia itself in its economy and political outlook, before police state enforcement is ever introduced. The best way to explain the aim here is simply to quote the directive under which some of the very largest American foundations have been secretly but visibly working for years. This directive is, quote, "so to change the economic and political structure of the United States so that it can be comfortably merged with Soviet Russia," unquote. That's the goal. But before that happens under a one world government, merger must take place regionally. Yet the foundation for this has been built since 1994. Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger said of NAFTA that it is not a conventional trade agreement, but the hopeful architecture of a new international system. As we have repeatedly said over the years, Kissinger and the architects of NAFTA view it as a building block for world government, beginning with the regional integration of all three countries into one supranational economic and political union, commonly referred to as the North American Union. And this is why we are so focused on getting out of NAFTA and getting out of the United Nations. Many do not realize how many years of socialism, globalism, and communist achievements we can do away with by not paying our UN dues and not participating in its charade. So please share the Project Veritas videos far and wide, and then ask others in a follow-up to call and email Congress and President Trump to get us out of the United Nations by supporting H.R. 193, the American Sovereignty Restoration Act. Links are included in the description. And please, like and share this video and subscribe to our social media channels and news alerts. Until next time, we'll see you then.